Una-una, ang Senado ay hindi isang hukuman at hindi po tayo naririto upang magpasya kung ang isang tao ay nagkasala o walang sala. Ang atin pong ginagawa ay hindi po para maghusga ng innocence or guilt ng mga akusado sa isang kaso. Nais ko pong hilingin sa lahat na during these proceedings, we show utmost respect and consideration to all persons here present, whether accuser or accused. Ang Senado po should remain as a bastion of dignity. Hindi po tayo narito para magtapon ng kung ano-anong dumi sa bawat isa, kung hindi para ipakita na ang paggawa ng batas ay ating pinapahalagahan at pinapahalagahan din natin ang karapatan ng mga naririto. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Magandang umaga sa ating mga resource persons. Magandang umaga kay Pastor Apollo Quiboloy at sa lahat ng mga naririto. At sa mga kapwa kong mambabatas, kahit po yung nandun sa online at sa ating mga panauhin, tayo po ay naririto sa harap ng committee ito sa isang maulang araw. At nais ko lang linawin po ang layunin para sa aking perspective as an officer of the court, as a lawyer, kung ano po ang layunin at kahalagahan ng pagdinig na ito. Ang Senado ay, unang-una, ang Senado ay hindi isang hukuman. At hindi po tayo naririto upang magpasya kung ang isang tao ay nagkasala o walang sala. Sa ilalim ng saligang batas ng Pilipinas, lalong-lalo na sa Article 6, Section 21, binigyan tayo ng kapangyarihan. Tinutukoy ko po ang mga mambabatas na magsagawa ng mga investigasyon in aid of legislation o bilang tulong sa paggawa ng mga batas. Sa hukuman, ang pangunahing layunin ay ang paglutas ng mga kaso at pag-alam kung may pananagutan o wala ang mga akusado, batay sa ebidensyang ipinapakita. Sa Senado, ang ating layunin ay iba. Ito ay upang mag-imbestiga at mangalap ng mga impormasyon at dokumento para sa isang makatarungan at makabuluhang pagbalangkas ng mga batas. Sa isang husgado, meron pong tinatawag na right cross-examine witnesses. Maliwanag po sa Rules of Court, ang Bill of Rights, at iba pa. Ngunit nais ko pong ipabatid na ang karapatang mag-cross-examine ng mga testigo isang mahalagang bahagi ng mga pagdinig ng korte ay hindi saklaw ng investigasyong ito. Ang proseso ng cross-examination at iba pang pamamaraan na ginagamit ng korte ay eksklusibo sa hudikatura. But we recognize, this committee, again as an officer of the court, recognizes the primacy of the judiciary insofar as this issue is concerned. One, because the committee requested the Regional Trial Court of Pasig to allow the detainees to attend today's hearing. It is an acknowledgement of the court's jurisdiction over the accused. Number two, the committee, before it moved and conducted a hearing today, showed respect to the court by acknowledging the court's jurisdiction and not conducting a hearing without the prior court approval. And number two, and I would want to make a motion here before I continue my opening statement, Madam Chair, this committee should likewise be furnished a copy of any opposition filed to form part of the records of these proceedings of the counsel of those accused present here. I request, Madam Chair, that we be provided copies of any opposition filed by the group of Pastor Quiboloy and all other accused in the Pasig case, if that would merit the consideration of this committee, Madam Chair.
So ruled, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That would form part of the records of this case, Madam Chair. And again, I reiterate what I've been saying here. Ang atin pong ginagawa ay hindi po para maghusga ng innocence or guilt ng mga akusado sa isang kaso. Subalit, nais po rin nating bigyan diin na napakaraming desisyon ng Korte Suprema, simula pa lang nung Arnold versus Nazareno, 1950, na binigyan diin ng Korte Suprema ang kapangyarihan ng Senado na mag-imbita at magpatawag ng mga saksi, resource persons, para linawin ang paggawa ng batas. At kaya po tayo merong pagdinig ngayon. Subalit, nais ko pong hilingin sa lahat that during these proceedings, we show utmost respect and consideration to all persons here present, whether accuser or accused. Ang Senado po should remain as a bastion of dignity. Hindi po tayo narito para magtapon ng kung ano-anong dumi sa bawat isa, kung hindi para ipakita na ang paggawa ng batas ay ating pinapahalagahan at pinapahalagahan din natin ang karapatan ng mga naririto. Sa hukuman, meron silang, ulitin ko, meron silang karapatan na magsalita ang abogado. Dito po ay hindi. Let me ask the committee and all my colleagues here, whether present physically or virtually, to assure all of those listening that under our rules, all resource persons will be treated with respect and afforded fair treatment. And that this institution, as I've said, will always pride itself in upholding the principles of fairness and transparency. However, if there are legal matters against you, it must be addressed in the proper judicial forum, not here. In summary, while we have the authority to compel testimony in aid of legislation, any allegations or charges will have to be resolved in the court of law. And I'm now referring to the Regional Trial Court of Pasig. Madam Chair, let us always be reminded that we have a constitution. We have a living constitution, and that the constitution should stand as our unwavering shield, protecting the rights of all, whether accused or accuser, in ensuring that justice is served without discrimination and with fairness and equality. Sana po sa pagdinig na ito, makagawa tayo ng nararapat na pagbabago sa batas, and I'm referring to the Human Trafficking Act, the elements of which we cannot change because we're bound, Secretary Manalo is here, by the Palermo Convention. Perhaps the penalties could be increased, but just the same, this hearing is required of us as part of the complexities of governance that would require us to listen to various voices, even those embroiled in legal challenges and scrutiny. Again, Madam Chair, it is crucial that we uphold the integrity of our legislative process by respecting all resource persons present and upholding due process and fairness. Our commitment must be to engage in a meaningful dialogue while adhering to the principles of justice and respect for individual rights. Our role is to seek the truth. To seek the truth. Mapagandan ho natin yung batas, marami nakikinig ngayon, and not to pass judgment. Madam Chair, thank you for giving me the privilege to have an opening statement, and again, let that serve as a continuing manifestation as to the role of this committee in the coming minutes and in the coming hours as we proceed. I now yield the floor. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga sa inyo lahat.
Maraming salamat din po, Majority Leader. At dagdag dun sa areas of legislation na tinukoy ng Majority Leader, inuulit ko lang yung bahagi ng opening statement ko rin kanina tungkol sa ating mga batas kaugnay ng pag-misuse ng usapin ng religious freedom, yung mga rape laws natin, kung nasasaklaw na nito yung mga usapin ng consent, sexual agency at religious freedom, at yung mga labor laws din natin, kung saklaw yung mga karapatan at kagalingan ng mga tinatawag na religious volunteers. So muli, salamat po sa Majority Leader. And at this point, lastly, bago natin pakinggan yung ating mga victim survivors, may request po sa ating good Foreign Affairs Secretary Manalo dahil kinakailangan nilang umalis ng mas maaga na makapagbigay ng ilang mga salita sa atin. Secretary Manalo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Maraming salamat, Honorable Chairperson Senator Risa Hontiveros, Honorable Senator Francis Tolentino, my colleagues in government, good morning. I just want to thank Senator Hontiveros and this committee for giving the Department of Foreign Affairs the opportunity to contribute to our meeting today in aid of legislation. Nais ko lang briefing lang on 2 points, with your permission. The first point is on the possible extradition issue. And as you know, the Philippines has an extradition treaty with the United States of America. I wish to report that as of this date, the Department of Foreign Affairs has not received a formal extradition request from the United States. Doon po sa isang issue din, I want to focus on the request for assistance by any Filipino nationals in the United States who may have been victims of human trafficking in relation to this case. As of this date, none of our foreign service posts in the United States have reported receiving any request for assistance. Madam Chair, the DFA is ready to assist in providing any information that we may receive from this date relevant to the to today's legislative inquiry. And I'm also being joined today by Undersecretary Jose Domingo, who can add any input if needed for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Manalo. Yes, would you, Sec Domingo, like to briefly add anything to these two updates on the formal request for extradition and the request for assistance?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Tolentino. Yes, as Secretary Manalo has mentioned, that we have not yet received a formal request, but we are standing by. Also, we have also not received any request with regard to trafficking, with assistance with respect to the human trafficking. But all our Foreign Service posts and all our offices in the Department of Foreign Affairs stand ready. And we have been in informal consultation and communications with our sister agencies in government. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you also, Yusek Domingo. The Majority Leader would like
Just
to
one
interject.
quick follow-up question, address either the Secretary Manalo or Yusek Domingo. I have here in my possession in front of me our extradition treaty signed November 13, 1994, which I believe should be read alongside Presidential Decree 1069. This has some legal complexities involved, and perhaps you might want to educate this committee, which would have primacy just in case an extradition request is sent to the DFA. What would happen to the pending cases lodged before the Regional Trial Court of Pasig pursuant to PD 1069?
Thank you very much,
Secretary
Senator.
Manalo.
Yeah. If I could first give a very general answer, and then, of course, on any specifics that might arise in the event that we receive a formal extradition request. Just to say, if we do receive a formal request, we will, the DFA will, of course, study it and see if it is consistent with the agreed procedure pertaining to extradition. And here's where PD 1069 would also come in. So we would have to study that. And then after, if we are satisfied with the request, we will, of course, refer it to the Department of Justice for relevant action. So in other words, we will still have to study any extradition request if received. Perhaps later, it's quite a detailed approach, pero yun ang general approach if we do receive such a request. Thank you.
One quick follow-up, just to remind the officials of Department of Foreign Affairs as well as councils present here. Anything that would transpire and would come out of these proceedings under oath would be recorded. And pursuant to existing extradition rules, any request to have any transcripts coming out of these proceedings would have to be coursed through the DFA. Kayo po ang magpapadala nito mula sa committee ito papunta kung saan man. So you should be aware of that, and the lawyers here present should be aware of that, because this would trigger some concerns involving civil rights or individual rights. So just be aware of that, and I suggest, Madam Chair, that the DFA should stay here till the conclusion of the investigation proceedings, to be physically present. But that's what I'm saying. Thank you, Madam Chair. Gusto ko lang tanungin ang hindi ko kasi nakita kanina dito pala ang Department of Justice relative to my previous questions answered by the DFA. This is speculative, academic, and uh, purely legal. If wherever, if an extradition request is lodged before the DFA, there is under the PD, which I cited before, a process which would necessitate the Department of Justice to file a petition. But that is another court. And that is another court which would constitute as the extradition court here in the Philippines. And if there is going to be an extradition hearing, the purpose is not to determine the guilt or innocence of the accused, but whether they would fall under the ambit of our extradition treaty. Is that correct? Who will answer? Attorney Torrevillas or Attorney Quintana? Speculative lang ito. Ano lang to?
Senior State Counsel Quintana, I believe, Majority Leader.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, sir. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Your Honor. As to the as to what will happen on, should the Department of Foreign Affairs later on receive a request for the extradition of Mr. Quiboloy and the present criminal cases are filed against him, the Philippines, as a requested state under the Philippines-US extradition treaty, has the option to postpone the filing of the extradition case. In which case,
Postpone.
only the filing, Your Honor.
But
Uh,
is the extradition court would be constituted here in the Philippines.
yes, Your Honor.
Not necessarily the court where the hearing is being
Yes,
conducted.
it would be a separate separate proceeding, and as I mentioned, it might be postponed, or we can accept the request and file the case in a separate extradition
It
case.
will not be a criminal court.
No, Your Honor. As you correctly pointed out earlier, the extradition court is not there to determine the guilt or innocence of the subject of the request.
Thank you, attorney. But my second question is related to the first question and to the previous questions. The extradition shall not be granted under Article 4 when the person sought has been tried, convicted, or acquitted. Tama po ba yun? So pag may pending case na rito at mabilis yung proseso, conviction or acquittal, hindi na siya pwedeng i-extradite. Is that correct?
Your Honor, under Article 4, that may be a ground for refusal of the request for extradition, but that in that case, so Your Honor, ang ano po dun parang in effect parang double jeopardy. But in this instance po, there is no double jeopardy kasi po yung
Saying double jeopardy. One of the grounds for refusal would be when there has been a trial, conviction, or acquittal that's explicitly stated under Article 4 prior prosecution. Double jeopardy will not apply because of the concept of dual sovereignty. Am I correct?
yes, Your Honor.
So, ang tanong ko, mas makakabuti ba na mas mabilis ang trial sa Pasig, which would result in either conviction or acquittal, dahil hindi na pwedeng ma-extradite?
Sir, it's independent of the request for extradition. So regardless if the criminal cases are terminated, are expedited, it will not affect the extradition request.
Siguro, aralin niyo mabuti itong Section 1 ng Article 4. Parang very explicit naman ito. You still have time. Number 3 question, I learned that correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you're following this through news accounts, that the Department of Justice of the United States dismissed the charges against a certain Miss Dueñas. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, and this was just a few weeks ago.
Last week, Your Honor.
Last week.
October 7.
So, ang tanong ko rito, and this will probably be a lingering question, what would be the effect of the dismissal of the U.S. cases against, is Dueñas a miss or a male? Ano ba yan? Female? She? Female. What would be the effect of the dismissal of the U.S. cases against Miss Dueñas to the pending cases of Pastor Quiboloy in the Philippines, since some of the elements would be the same?
Your Honor, if I may defer to Prosecutor Torrevillas.
Torrevillas.
Deputy State Prosecutor Torrevillas, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Senator Tolentino. It will not affect the cases pending against Pastor Quiboloy, considering that Ms. Dueñas is not one of the accused in those cases.
One of the accused in cases pending before the regional trial court here in Pasig or in the United States Department of Justice. Saan po? Saan jurisdiction?
Before the Regional Trial Court of Pasig and Quezon City, Mr. Senator.
So it won't affect.
Yes.
But there is an interrelationship between the elements involved in the U.S. cases and the Philippine cases. Tama po ba yan? And probably I'm not jumping the gun on what the defense counsels were doing. So walang effect. As I've said, this is just speculative.
It will not affect the cases pending before the Regional Trial Court of Quezon City and the Regional Trial Court of Pasig because Ms. Dueñas is not one of the accused, neither she one of the witnesses for the prosecution.
But some of the defendants in the case pending before the U.S. Department of Justice are likewise defendants, are accused here in the Philippines. And I understand there would be a second hearing come May 20 before the U.S. Department of Justice. Tama po ba yun?
I am not aware of that.
Okay. So paano naman kung yun ang magkaroon ng ibang desisyon while pending dito sa Pasig and Quezon City yung ibang kaso? Any speculative answer? O kung wala, mahirap na
It
siguro.
has no connection at all
No connection
because,
at all.
opo.
Different jurisdictions, different elements. Again, Madam Chair, maraming salamat po sa pagbibigay sa akin ng pagkakataong makapagsalita. I reiterate again my earlier statements that respect and dignity should permeate the entire proceedings today. And I hope that the dignity of the Senate through this committee will be enshrined, Madam Chair. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataong ito at maraming salamat sa mga resource persons natin na dumalo. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Dagang salamat.
Umani naman ito ng iba't ibang reaksyon mula sa ating mga netizens. Ayon kay Mario Rinidad, ngayon alam mo na Senator Hontiveros kung sino yung protector ni Quiboloy. Hindi ka na mananalo, Tolentino. Pahayag naman ni Jones Binwa, ano ka ngayon, Risa? Hindi ka kasi marunong sa batas kaya makinig ka sa abogadong senador. At ito naman ang saloobin mula sa ating kababayan na si Dulce Lepeña. Very well said, Senador Tolentino. Now, hindi ka natunog bias. Walang cross-examination dapat. Mga kababayan, feel free to comment below para maglabas ng saloobin sa balitang ito.